Hello everyone and welcome to Creature Feature Volume 15, Tails. First I'll go through three methods that I like to use it. First is loading the whole subtool containing all the tails and cycling through them, then using the InsertMesh brush, and then finally using the curve brushes. And I'll go into the details of the curve brushes as well, as they have a few more parameters than my packs would normally utilize. So let's go. So this is just the whole subtool. Let me unhide by pressing Ctrl Alt on one of these icons. So it unhides all the tails in the scene. It's about 38. So it'll be slow. So I Control Shift again, so to hide everything. So if you press up and down on your keyboard, it will only show one at a time. So I've added the character I want to play around with to this scene instead of the other way around. So let me get rid of my mouse and take out my tablet. What am I thinking? The hell am I thinking? Excuse me very much. Okay, I am ready. So click on that eye icon so this guy is always visible. Now we can cycle through the tails. There's quite a few lizard, demon, dragon, fish, mermaid, lots of stuff. This is my preferred method because I know the tails are all roughly in place and I don't have to use the InsertMesh, which is fine as well. You know, it's all preference. This is just my preference. I'm pressing the down arrow, or you can simply click. I prefer the down arrow. So we have about 4 major varieties of reptilian ones, and I'm just using the move key. I've got the 3 button on my keyboard, hotkey to move. And so I would play around with stuff, and unless you know exactly what you want, but generally this is the workflow I would use when concepting with or designing characters. Seems like all these guys seem to fit our quadruped friend. This is my favorite one of the lizard, or sorry, reptile variety. Let me turn symmetry on. Based on type of crocodile, I believe. Well, obviously. Well, I believe. Unnecessary words. Okay, I like this one too. It's quite simple but fairly effective. Another big difference between the subtools and the insert meshes is when you're using a curve brush, actually I'll talk about that later, they can't be as unique. Like every segment can be, you know, the whole thing is uniquely sculpted with all my love. Now the curve ones are sculpted with love as well, but they cannot, by the nature of how they're made, be as unique, but they're still useful and fun to use. This will be more of an aquatic creature kind of thing. This is the same thing, just flipped the other way and bent the other way, but it counts as one of the 33, so I'm trying to rip people off. It's not considered its own tail. That doesn't work. Didn't expect it to. Standard kind of lizardy thing going on. This is also one of my favorites. It's very simple, but I've got Control 1 hotkey to that, to solo on my keyboard. Yeah, very useful tail, because it can fit almost any creature. This is one of my favorites, because it's got this ugly frill there, which I quite like. Now if I position it here, I would like to keep that frill, so again, move brush to the rescue. Ooh, not like that's too much. Let's do this instead. Naturally, depending on how you work, what you want, depending on the creature, and a billion other factors. Depends on how you will need to resculpt, not resculpt, but do additive sculpting and dynamesh it all together eventually. I'd stretch a bit too much, but I'm not going to do a fine job now due to time and not wanting to bore the living crap out of everyone. I do like that. Okay, let's move on. Another dinosaur-esque fantasy dinosaur tale. Okay, let's move on. The tri-finned lizard. Nah, doesn't fit him at all. This one kind of works. Like it's a creature that somehow I don't know. You figure it out. Based on a rattlesnake. Oops, I moved it incorrectly. This counts as the same one, it's just with a pointy bit and no rattle. This is based on an armadillo, except mine's a little bit more aggressive because I like sculpting things with more spikes and in an aggressive fashion. That's just my preference. Interesting. This would be good for like gnarly dragons, demon tails, Diablo-esque stuff. This is a companion to that, but different. Ooh. Whoops, don't want to do that. Most of these actually fit this critter. Some strange spiky kind of thing going on. Another inspired by Trilobite, as many will probably realize. I do like that one, especially like using that one on brutish bipeds. This is based on a xenomorph, or one of the many varieties you can find online. Based on a centipede mixed with hell, a halipede. Oh, I like that. Also influenced by centipede kind of things. Its alternate version is curved, like this. Also counts as one tail of a 33. It's for your convenience, so you know, because that's a nice position. Scorpion. This is based on an Egyptian fat-tailed scorpion. They look really, really, really intimidating. I don't know how poisonous they actually are, but they look pretty amazing. Armored and thick, chunky guys. Doesn't suit this guy at all. Demonic version of a scorpion. Or a dragon scorpion, or whatever. Lobster tail, but this won't fit this guy at all. 3 variations. This looks alright on him. Kind of furry, whoops, or feathery. Yeah. Aha. This suits him very well. Just needs to... Yeah. Give it a bit of thickness. Inflate this a bit, see what happens. My control 1 is inflate. 3, move it a bit. Kinda cute. Yeah, that makes sense. A very clean tail, actually. Almost stylized, but not on purpose. This is a bit more wiry. It was made using fiber mesh. Quite easy, actually. It's got a play with the parameters. Classic devil tail. Huh. Part of the ongoing rock versions in the packs. Strange magical rock thing going on. This is based on an anaconda skeleton I saw. Simple and repetitive, but I do like it. And then finally, a mermaid tail. Probably won't have that much use, but I'm sure someone will find a spot for it somewhere. Definitely not on this guy. But hey. I'm going to pause the video and carry on recording. The next stage will be IMMs. I will see you after the incredibly short 5-second break. Alright, we are back. This is a very old character from 2018. Yeah, 2018. So excuse the... Well, I never finished it, but I thought I'd play around with it. Anyway, that's irrelevant. Let us see how tails look on this guy. So I'm loaded the InsertMesh brush and put it there. Got symmetry on. And I'm holding shift. Just drawing it out. Some of the tails are slightly asymmetrical, but that shouldn't be a problem. Now, if you press Q, you know, you can draw and stuff. If you press W, the gizmo comes up, and then you can cycle through the tails up here. Which is just another fine way to do stuff. Although I still prefer the subtool way. Though you've got a complex character, it might be difficult to load all the character's parts into the subtool file, but you can simplify it and just load a placeholder and get what you want. But this is still a perfectly valid way. Then you can press Q again to move stuff around, press W, and now if you go back to this, it might screw up. No, it didn't. It's a miracle. So I'm not going to go through them all again, just showing very quickly. It's the same meshes, just in the InsertMesh. About 38, so 33 base ones with 5 varieties of a few random ones. Let's move on to a different character. This is also a super old, very weird thing. Don't know what to think of it. I'll probably never finish it ever because it's just weird, but again, it's got multiple. Delete lower. Symmetry's on, I'm holding draw, then hold shift. So sometimes if you've got irregular surface that you're drawing out on, it might be better to get a cube in there and then... But that's fine, that'll do for the demonstration's purposes. Let's go back to these guys. Ooh, so now this really fits this guy. It would have been handy if I had a dragon somewhere, but I've never really sculpted a dragon, because this would suit, or Diablo, something like that. And just use the move brush to get it however the hell you like. Press Q, go back to your subtool. And so on. Yeah, so that's the InsertMesh. It's exactly the same tails, the same detail, the same high detail. They're all about... each of these is between 100,000 and a million tries. Only like 1 or 2 are a million. Most are like, on average, 500 or 400k, which is not too horrible. Right, I'm going to pause again, and then we'll go into detail into the curves. And we are back. This is the third and final segment, curves, and I'll go into detail into all the functionality and so on. I tend to use insert meshes or subtools for tails, but these can be fun to play around with if you so choose. If you quickly want to make winding tails and so on. So let's show you the first problem you might get. It's very common. So I want to draw out a tail. Action cancelled. Because I have subdivision levels in my geometry. So either get rid of them, or let's say you have a character that has subdivisions that you do not want to lose, you don't want to freeze it. Just draw another sphere inside the character and draw onto that. It'll still snap to the character. But I'm just going to get rid of those now. Delete lower. So this is the reptile tail I showed earlier, but as you can see, it's still totally usable, but it's completely repetitive because this is how tri-mesh parts work. Let me draw out a very simple 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I'm trying to draw up 3 so I can show you how they're made. There we go. You can see 1, 2, 3 segments. This is how they're actually constructed. You make a beginning, one polygroup, a middle. This gets repeated until you stop drawing, and then an end gets spawned when you stop drawing. So it creates, look at the polygroup at the beginning, the middle spawned until you stop drawing, and then the end. Hence, the other sculpts are being way more detailed or less repetitive. These are still detailed, but yeah, people should be aware of that. You can see it's going through the sphere. This is by default, and I can't pull it away. It's locked to that point. That's because lock start is on by default. If you want it off, just turn off lock start. But for tails, you would generally want that on. You don't have to, but it makes sense because you start at a point on the ass and then. Anyway, if you want it to snap to a surface, just turn snap on. As simple as that. So I'm going to turn off lock start and snap. Now you can pull it around and just pull it lovely on the surface. Just bear in mind, the longer it gets, the higher the poly count will get, because these are quite dense curves, to be honest. Now if you want to extend it, you can get close to this end tip. See a little red line forms, and now it'll make it longer. You can do that infinitely, or whatever your computer can handle. Elastic works with how extends work. I think. Yeah, elastic is just a different kind of extend, but I've not actually used it myself. The manual will probably explain it. Liquid extends like this, which is really cool. If liquid, yeah, it's turned on. It's actually easier to do than wait for the little connector. Just turn on liquid, click on the end bit, and draw it further. Beautiful. Just turn liquid off. Now you're dragging the whole thing along. I'm gonna undo that. About there. Well, it's important. Okay, so this is the reason it gets smaller and smaller is because size is turned on. Now it will start big, end small, flip it, start small, end big. And you can of course have, say, a hump in the middle, so it starts small, gets big, and gets small again, or anything you can think of really, but this is the reason these brushes are split, because this one does not have size enabled, and you can't save it per mesh. That's why the brushes are split. So all of these guys Have size enabled by default. I had to turn it on now because I turned it off myself. And all of these guys do not get smaller, even though some of them appear to. They don't really do. But they've got more unique end parts. That's why size is off. Like this guy's got spikes at the end, which if I turn size on, look what's gonna happen to those spikes. Just maybe you want that, but that's not how they were intended. So this guy still looks actually fine. Some of them look fine with size, but it's actually designed to be this chunky, where you can have less of a fall off, and then just tap it again. And that's a terrible fall off. Whoops. I don't have size on, that's why it's not working. There we go. So that's like a more bulging. I'm gonna reset this guy and flip it. Turn size off. So that's how that works. I'm gonna go back to the getting smaller guys. Undo all that. This one is quite lovely to draw out. So I suppose these would be more useful for miniature sculpting when you want it in a pose position instead of moving the insert meshes around, which you can also do, but this would be a nice, if you want it in a really specific position, it'll, you know, it's very easy to do this, and you can just go in and vary the sculpt if you want. I mean, with a 3D print you probably won't even notice because they're generally quite small. And another important thing is, so we've got our curve line. You want to check out a different tail, tap on that, and just as soon as it turns blue, see it's red now, blue, red, blue. As soon as it's blue, it's got it means different things. Now if I tap, it'll change to that mesh. I mistap, that's why that happened. There we go. This is a variation of that guy with only one fin. If I make the red reticule smaller, it'll make this smaller. Or thinner, sorry. Oh, smaller, yeah. If I make the blue reticule bigger, it's independent, see, that's still small. This is to move the whole thing around. I generally have it quite large, moving that around. But this is just to tap. Affect the size of this guy, and once you're happy, just tap on the mesh, and now he's committed. I'm gonna undo that. If you pull at the start bit, you pull the whole thing without it moving too much. If you pull at the end, as you know, then depending on those settings, it'll deform in various ways. Let's try a different mesh. Plain old viperish snake thing going on. So all of the meshes, I think there's one from the insert meshes that's not also a curve brush because it just doesn't work. I think that fat tail is not one of these, but it just doesn't work out at all. What else is there? It's quite important. Let's go to brush. Modifiers. So all of these are tripods. All of them I've set to 15 curve resolution, and they can bend at 90 degrees. I don't really know why you'd not want that, but you can play with it if you want. Maybe it could be useful in some cases, I guess, where it can only bend a certain... Yeah, actually that is useful. It's more controllable the less it's allowed to bend. The curve resolution, I find 15 gives me the least amount of weird errors, whereas it's really hard to see the difference at some point. I'm going to turn that back to 90. So to be honest, I haven't really played around much with curve resolution. I just leave it at 15. Stretch. Overlap only works with stretch. Joseph Drust taught me something on, well, not personally, on YouTube. I remember now, because most people don't know what that parameter is actually for. See the overlap, it's now getting segmented the more it's in the minus, which is pretty cool, where you can have an overlap. Sometimes you can get unexpected cool effects with it. Like, the tail can change quite a bit. That's worth playing around with. Let's go to a... I really like these. This is the same one, just inverted for your convenience. Maybe you want the spikes to flow the other way. Still counts as one mesh as usual. Same with this guy. This is one of my favorites. I'm gonna go with him for now. Obviously the poly count's way higher now because of I have so I'm gonna get a segment count I'm happy with. Yeah, that'll do. Don't autosave. So I believe if you've got stretch on and you have curve step on, that will do something interesting. That's a bit screwed up if you ask me. Let me redraw it. Okay, so this is what happens. Previously, if our curve step was 1, and you overlap in the minus, it actually creates gaps. If stretch is on, let's put overlap back to 0. This also interacts with stretch. You can get a whole new... I didn't go too far. It stretches the segments to have no gaps, which is not the same as what that does, which is pretty cool. I should play around with this more, actually. Wonder what the opposite does. Huh. So that is another thing to keep in mind. Thanks to Joseph Drust. I'm sure people can come up with cool stuff. Although this guy is a bit... Tap. He's all squashed. I know his curve step's alright. Stretch. So they don't like that without gaps, but with gaps, they like it. Sort of. So it actually stretches the segments individually as opposed to the whole tail. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling on about that now. Just trying to think if there's anything else that's vitally important. I mean, that's the basics. The rest is... The Pixelogic manual is very, very clear about each of these. Also, in general, if you hold down Control in Zbrush, almost all buttons have an explanation for that button, which is just the best. All programs should be like this, where you've got the help. You don't have to press F1 or go to a manual, you just hover over the button. There are a few that doesn't have it, but as you can see, most tell you exactly what it does. But I generally... The brush as it comes, as you're getting it in the product, is generally how I use it. So there's not, you don't have to change anything, but the point is that you can. I've never used this, so I don't know what it does, frankly. Finally, smooth. Now, let's go way back in time. Let's say, I'm going to use a kind of... Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. that you've got a wonky curve like that. By default, I've ruined my hotkey. If you press 6 on your keyboard, it will... Well, button's not 6 anymore. It will activate that, basically. It smooths out the brush, but it will do it in finer increments than this, which is... And then you tap on it again, and it smooths it out. So you've drawn it out like that, and you want to have it smooth just a little bit. You press 6 until you're happy, and then tap on it. For me, it's going to do it really... Oh no, it's pretty good. Smooth. And it just basically averages between... I'm trying to pretend that I know the math, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so it's the same meshes just as curves, really, and simplified due to the way they're constructed. A whole lot except that fat short tail. But I admit it's a lot of fun playing around with these. Oh, that one's come out not ideal. So yeah, that's how curves work. Very simple. Hover over a button if you don't know what to do. There's one thing I need to explain. So these guys also appear in... Some of them you'll see appear in the other brush as well. That's because... Let me show you how they were made. Whoa. Let's make that shorter. Let's see if liquid can make it shorter. I'm sure it can, but I don't know how. Oh, it did a bit. Anyway, let me turn on poly groups. So this one was designed, that's why it doesn't have size fall off. Beginning, then the middle bit repeated, and the end bit was manually uniquely sculpted, so it's a whole end bit that's repeated, so that end bit will not bend. You've got if you don't like that, you can just go to the other version, which is slightly different. So it's just preference, really. As usual, I just recommend playing around with these guys. Again, my favorite guy. You can see a long, unique end bit, the middle bit repeated over and over, and the start bit. And undo. There you go. That's the curve brush. I'm going to go through each and every one because you've seen them already. I'm pretty sure that should be adequate. Yeah, a lot of fun to use. Now, let's go to a character, just lastly. I honestly don't like using them too much. Let's use this guy, why not? Like a very old character. Yeah, it's fine. Because it can be tricky to get them where you want them. Best is to go from the top, really. And it's actually not tricky at all. Just make sure snap is off. Well, you don't have to, depends on your... And snapping anyway, isn't that fun? I'm gonna lock the start and just move it out. There we go. Now you can do that. So symmetry doesn't really matter if you're gonna bend them anyway, right? So you can go... Similar to using the move brush with the more detailed ones, but not quite the same. You get a lovely smooth movement, but you're sacrificing detail. So it really depends on your preference. Then we can see what liquid does again. Grows the tail. Looks ridiculous, but I like it. Tap. This kind of suits him. Make it smaller. What the hell am I doing? It works. I'm holding down Alt and pressing. I don't know if Alt needs to be pressed. No, it doesn't. Don't need to press Alt at all, so you can make it smaller as well. Sometimes it's a bit tricky. This is if liquid's on, by the way. If liquid's off, it'll move it. But I do like it with liquid. It's pretty fun. Play around with it. So there you go. I'm gonna stop waffling on about it. Sorry for the disjointed third bit, because I couldn't quite remember everything live as I'm recording. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy this pack. I quite like it a lot. And it makes me come up with ideas that I wouldn't have thought of as usual with the other packs. I don't think there's anything else I missed. Yeah, have a good day, evening, wherever on earth you are, and see you later.